All right, welcome back to the Ottawa studios of Inside My Canoe Head. I am your host, Dr. D. Today, we are going to talk about the American dream and preparedness and why the two of them really go hand in hand and why the American dream is not the one you're thinking of. So sit back, grab yourself your favorite beverage. Let's get at her. All right, welcome back. A couple of housekeeping. Thanks again for everybody dropping into www.insidemycanoehead.ca. Good Canadian soul there. Dropping us emails, notes, little thank yous, whatever it may be, compliments, and otherwise contrarian views of our points of view here at Inside My Canoe Head. We are open. We want your feedback, good, bad, or indifferent. Keep it coming. We appreciate it. And again, I just want to say that I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to listen to us. We know that there are something like 1.4 million podcasts active on Apple, and here we are. So thanks again for joining us. We'll jump right into it. The American Dream. When we talk about the American Dream today, we are referring to a dream that is pretty constant across most of the global north. Let's call it the world dream or whatever, but the American dream is typically the most reasonable monkier to use for it. That's the dream where you find the love of your life, you get married, you decide you want to buy a house. That could be a condo, that could be a house with a white picket fence and a yard for your kiddies to play in. You're going to have some kiddies. You're going to earn a single family good income with good benefits and a great defined pension plan that's protected by a healthy company. The end result is this is what was typically referred to as the American dream. Now, it did exist, and it was very much fueled the expansion of suburbia and many of the current United States cities, and it kind of morphed into Canada as well, really up until about the 1970s. So this was a post-war boom era where manufacturing was kicking back off. The economy was booming. People were coming back. Education was ramping up because a lot of American returning service persons got access to free college and many other benefits. The economy was booming through the 60s, skip the oil crisis in the early 1970s, but really up until Bill Clinton's presidency in the 1980s, did we run into a position where it started to become a bit untenable, right? The idea that you could keep this dream and didn't require your spouse to get at least a part-time job to supplement the income, or that economic woes up and down. I mean, people went through 17% mortgages in the early 1980s. Yeah, I know the house prices were lower then, but for a considerable period of time, let's call it the silent generation, the boomer generation, and into part of Gen X, grew up in an experience of where this is exactly how family life was depicted. And it's usually transgenerational because when you grow up in a certain environment, that environment, if it's a positive environment, and I get that not everybody's is, but if you grow up in a positive environment and you enjoyed that experience, you likely look forward to replicating that with you and your family, right? Which is why culture matters. So in America and Canada, where there's a massive amount of space, we can easily have these big sprawling suburbs. Now they cost a little bit of questionable in infrastructure. But at the time, it was logical to do that. And then you look at the not countercultural, but different cultural view in European cities where it's perfectly normal and culturally acceptable to raise a family in an apartment flat, right? You may not own the flat. You probably rent the flat. You'll rent for 50 years, 60 years, 70 years. And that's just absolutely culturally normal. It's not wrong. They're not missing out on anything. That's their cultural norm. So if you grow up in that type of stable, happy, reasonably content experience, you're going to want to replicate it, right? This is the reason why, for the most part, that the American dream transcends generations, right? Because today we can still look back at the generation, even though that version of the American dream is dead. And we're going to talk about that in the podcast, that we can look back and we can see video efforts and we have stories and we can still talk to people who lived that American dream, that comfortable existence of a single income in a family, spouse normally the wife stays home, raises the kids, harder job than working, trust me. And you just carry on, and you have a great life, and your kids are in sports programs, and you have a defined pension plan from your company that you worked for 40 years. You retire, you get your golden watch, and you have a great retirement, right? That existed, and we can still see that, right? And that's part of what the difficulty we have today in persuading individuals that that's no longer present. So before we get into what it's what it's transformed into and what that means, is why is this related to preparedness, right? Why is Preparedness podcast guy talking about the American dream and apparently the demise of it? Well, let me square this away. We've always said that preparedness exists to protect your life. Now, you choose your life, and I'm a huge proponent, and if you listen to this podcast for a long time, I'm the one who stands up and cheers when somebody says they want to be an artist, right? You know my 3 rules for life. If you're an artist and you want to paint pictures for the rest of your life, I think that's an awesome, incredible, brilliant way to live your life. But you have a responsibility to pay your bills, right? And if you're not earning sufficient income to cover all of your costs as an artist, you have a duty and responsibility to yourself and the rest of society to get a part-time job to pay for it, right? I get that. But the point is that you are in charge of your life. You are in charge 100% of designing what you want. You chase your dreams. You rock an incredible life. We use those monikers all the time because they matter. Because in this, you're a grain of sand on a rock hurtling through space at 25,000 miles an hour. Take a deep breath, all right? You're going to be all right. But you need to be able to cover yourself and take care of yourself. But you need to live your own life. And the idea behind learning and adopting a prepared life is that preparedness provides that blanket of insulation that we wrap that life in. So as exogenous shocks, and remember, exogenous shocks are just external to you, keep punching you upside the head consistently and regularly, preparedness provides that little bounce back insulation that means you'll be harmed less. You'll be impacted less. You'll be disrupted less. You'll have potentially nominal or no disruption depending on the event, and you're protected to be able to carry on with your normal life. That's what preparedness offers everyone. When you adopt a prepared life, it enables, it facilitates, it actually encourages you to go out and chase your dreams. That's what wrapping a bank of preparedness in. So understanding what the American dream is and understanding what has happened to it is very, very applicable through the preparedness lens. Because if you are trying to protect a life, if you're trying to protect a lifestyle that is not grounded in reality, possibility, or something that you could actually enjoy and experience, you're in a very, very difficult position, right? Because at that point, then you're trying to protect something that you can't achieve, right? Remember, that's the argument I'm going to make to you today, is that if you're pursuing the traditional American dream, you've missed the point. The American dream has changed. It's now something different. And by trying to relive that previous existence that belonged to a previous generation, you are outside of the norm, and you are going to find it exceptionally difficult, if not prohibitive, to create the previous American dream in today's 21st economy. That's the argument we're going to make for you on the podcast today. Now, in a bit of an economic lesson, the economy started really changing in the 1970s and 1980s for a whole bunch of geopolitical reasons that we're really not going to dive deeply into. This is not an economics lesson. That's not the point of a preparedness podcast, but the rationale is the world changed. As we went through this short but very impactful experience of globalism. Now, that happened really at the late end of the 1970s, really, and it expanded with the expansion of China. Now, China's expansion was facilitated 100% by the U.S. government through trade and agreement because, remember, in the Cold War, China was on our side against the Russian Empire. This is kind of the Soviet Empire. This has kind of switched a bit. But back then, China was on our side. So the U.S. economy was all about doing everything it could to facilitate the rapid rise and growth of China because, number one, it could make American conglomerates a ton of money. But what we saw is a hollowing out of the American center, the hollowing out of the manufacturing Midwest. So if you think about everything between the Rockies and the Appalachians, generally referred to as the American Midwest. I know there's Americans going to be rolling their eyes at me right now. Perfectly fine. I'm a good Canadian, and I apologize. I'm sorry. But everything in there was really the manufacturing heartland of America. And that was hollowed out in globalism in an event to achieve two things. One, to make U.S. conglomerates a ton of money, and two, to facilitate the rapid expansion of Southeast Asia, principally China, as an ally in the fight against the Soviet Union. And so that's the general premise of what happened. So all of these manufacturing plants were moved overseas, and they were moved overseas because the U.S. Navy was capable of protecting international shipping lines. They were the largest, most robust Navy on the planet. The Soviets and the U.S. Navy didn't want a conflict over economic trade, so it was the U.S. Navy that permitted globalization to happen around the world. Peter Zeihan is a fantastic speaker and author. There's a great book called The Accidental Superpower. There's a new version out there 10 years on. If you want to understand why America became a superpower, if you want to understand why the world turned into what it did during globalization post the Second World War, read his book. Him and Ray Dalio are probably the most two prominent authors that have really been able to codify this in very easily understandable language. But the end result is that Midwest kind of hollowed out. It was gone, right? The manufacturing left North America and it went overseas. And then the Cold War ended. And America didn't need China on their side anymore because the Soviet Union collapsed for a period of time into Russia and the other stands, and really no longer posed a great threat for a period of time during globalization, perestroika, and through glasnost. All of that to say is that the American dream was supported by massive manufacturing in the Midwest. When the manufacturing left under globalization, that was the death knell for the American dream. Now, people hung on to it. They hung on to the dream. They tried to replicate it for many things, but very quickly through the 1980s, 1990s, and in the start of the 2000s, people realized that with those high-paying manufacturing jobs gone and switching to a service-based industry or service-based national GDP, you really were in a position where those wages at your service wages are much lower than your manufacturing wages, which forced families to start to have two incomes. It took away that dream, it punctured the dream, and people felt a loss. They feel like they were being punished. They felt like something was being taken away from them. What their parents had, what they thought they deserved in the next generation, was being removed by circumstances beyond their control. They were victims to a changing economy. Those that did exceptionally well at that time and today are individuals who see that the economy and the structure of it changes, and they adapt the way they earn income and the way they operate, the way they live, adjusting to the economy in the country they live, right? So if you're still in North America, the economy doesn't look like it did in the manufacturing days. It doesn't look like it did in the globalization days, because now we're in a period of reshoring, but mostly friendshoring. Now, friendshoring is when those manufacturing plants, the new ones to replace the old ones, or the old ones, are not being built in China, Bangladesh, Vietnam anymore. They're being built in Mexico. So the United States of America, when they re-signed NAFTA 2.0, really are zeroing in on the production in friendshoring. The benefit of friendshoring is, for companies, number one, you get to build in Mexico. Now, it used to be about cheap labor. I don't care what you say. It's not about cheap labor anymore. It's about free trade. The reason being is, at the last year, and I haven't checked to see if there's been any changes, but last year, in the last couple of years, Mexico had free trade agreements with 55 countries around the world, including the United States of America under NAFTA. It's not really free trade. It's a trade agreement, right? So if you build a manufacturing plant in Mexico, you enjoy some lower cost, not substantially, but identifiably lower cost. But the huge benefit to manufacturing in Mexico is the fact that you now have free access or reduced tariff access to so many other global markets, right? It doesn't make any sense. Even if the United States of America is 70% of your market, you still save substantial amounts of money on that other 30% by building your factory in Mexico, right? In northern Mexico, in secure areas, along U.S., close to U.S. transportation links, but enjoying the international trade agreements. So you have friendshoring, you have the return of some manufacturing, but you really have a switch to what everybody is calling the knowledge economy. And the knowledge economy is based upon not your ability to build widgets, not your ability to work spreadsheets, but the knowledge you possess is going to, the knowledge and skills that you possess is going to equate to your income, right? The beginning emerging of this last decade was the gig economy. Now, the gig economy, for those that are not familiar, is an economy where you get it. It's referencing a band, right? So a band comes to play on a Friday night at your local pub. They get a gig. That's what it's called, right? It's just been called that for decades. I have no idea who invented the word gig. But when you look at the gig economy, that means I get a job to execute my skills with a client for a defined amount of money, and then I F off, right? I'm gone. They don't want anything more to do with me, because what companies don't want to do anymore, and it's very expensive to, is hire a full-time employee, because you have to pay benefits and a whole bunch of other things. If I need a graphic designer and I'm a company, right? I don't want to hire a full-time graphic designer. There's no interest in me doing, because I can access a service and just follow the numbers here. This explains it. There's a gentleman on YouTube, and I forget the channel. I should mention it, but copyright and all that. He runs a business where he makes $1.2 million a year from his living room. So what he does is he's the gig economy, right? The skills, the global workforce economy. The guy's a brilliant graphic designer, right? Nobody cares whether he's got a degree. Nobody gives a crap about that anymore. In the gig economy, nobody cares what your qualifications are. Everybody wants to know if you can do the job and do it exceptionally well. And this person just has ingrained or built or learned or whatever you want to call it, this incredible talent at doing graphic design. So he charges companies $5,000 a month, right? And he has something in the range of 15 to 20 companies. And they can have unlimited amount of submissions for graphic design. They only can have one at once, right? So they give one to him. He has, a period of time, 3, 4, 5 days, whatever it is, to return the product to him. Once he returns the product to him and they're happy with it, they can then give him a new product, right? That is a brilliant for a company, because you might say $5,000, who wants to pay that a month? That's only $60,000 a year. You hire an employee, a graphic designer, you're paying more than $60,000 a year. Even if you pay $60,000 a year, you have employee costs, you have workplace costs, you have pension costs, you have medical benefit costs. Before you know it, that $60,000 a year salary now costs you $80,000. And then if it doesn't work out, you've got the whole discipline, you've got the at-will employment, you've got to fire them, you've got to go through the process of hiring them. The global workforce economy the knowledge economy has now switched to, I simply want to hire somebody to execute a task outside of our core business. So what businesses are doing now is they're hiring for their core business. So if I am a firm that manufactures bed sheets, I need a core group of people who manufacture bed sheets. I can hire out my marketing. I can hire out my social media. I can hire out my bookkeeping. I can hire out my accounting. I can hire out my legal. You see what I mean? All these other service bases are not going to be brought in as paid full-time employees with benefits. The knowledge economy pushes those out onto the open free market on the internet to compete for the work. It is the most brilliant and most difficult global workforce. So as the global economy changed, when we moved through that period of globalization, which is now dead, there are a few humans out there that still think globalization exists. all the power to you. Have a great day. But we've moved into the knowledge economy now. And so this is how people are making their money. Unless you're in the core business of a business, unless you're in the core function of a business, you're out in the knowledge economy. So what the American dream looks like now is not the white picket fence. The American dream, if you look at it through the lens, is what is the easiest and most effective way to earn a salary. Now it's not a job. And let me say that again. The most effective and efficient way to earn a livable wage is not through an employment and a salary. That is not the American dream anymore. The American dream is the freedom to be able to earn an income from anywhere to do anything you want on something you're passionate about without having to have all of this ridiculous set of qualifications. Now, don't get me wrong. You want to be a lawyer, a doctor, an engineer? Yeah, school's going to be helpful and we're probably going to demand it. But if you want to be a graphic designer, if you want to be an artist, if you want to be a bookkeeper, if you want to do all of these things in the world, you're now, if you're following the new American dream, you're not looking and hiring a job. You're not looking for somebody to hire you as a salary, to pay you, to give you benefits, anything like that. What you're doing if you're in the knowledge economy is you're creating a small company, you're building a robust portfolio, and you're selling and you're in open competition with other people, right? You're in the gig economy. What you used to work for in the previous American dream, this big company, it's now transformed to the new American dream, is you as the company going out there and marketing yourself. What's your skill, right? What is your skill that you're really good at, that you're passionate about, and you'd love to earn money? As Neil Tyson deGrasse often says, figure out what you would do for free and love it, and then make that your income. So what is the thing that you would love to do all day, every day, and you're absolutely passionate about, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to get into following your dreams and figuring out what it is. You are a really smart, intelligent person, and you will. But to succeed in the global knowledge, internet-based economy, it is not through getting a salaried full-time job with benefits and contributing to a corporate pension plan. If you're chasing that, you're not chasing the modern American dream. You're chasing the old one. Few will be successful because those do exist really in the military and government jobs is about all you're going to get in the public sector. And a lot of governments are coming for their public sector because they're getting way too big, way too expensive, and way too ornery. And because of that, they're going to get a little bit of pushback from new governments. But the point being is that's not where the new economy is. The internet facilitated global competition. The internet facilitated the sharing of skill sets and the demonstration of your ability to earn an income. The internet gave you access to customers you would have never got access to now. For example, I sell a couple of digital products. I don't talk about them much on the podcast. It's not the purpose of the podcast, but I sell a couple of digital products. I would have had to sell that product in person. I would have had to persuade, if I have a video course on Adopt a Prepared Life. If I was to teach that in person, it's a very different model and revenue model than if I create an incredible opportunity for people to learn about preparedness and then I fire it up on the internet. I have access to billions. Let me say that again. Billions of people with a B, and then I just need to persuade them to buy my course, right? That's the offer. But the point being is that's the new world economy. And I want to, and those of you, I'm going to be politically incorrect here. Nobody cares if you like it, right? This is the point. It's the normative versus positive view. Nobody cares whether you think this is a good thing or not. Nobody cares whether you think this is the way how we should organize society. Nobody cares if you think it's unfair, right? If you think it's unfair that Jeff Bezos has billions and you don't, nobody cares. The people who are successful adapt to the environment around them. That's a function of preparedness. You adapt to the environment around you, and as the conditions change, you change with the conditions, right? So as the economic global conditions have transformed from the previous white picket fence to what it is now, those who are successful are those who transitioned to the new world economy, to the new knowledge-based gig, sales-based economy. That's people who are successful, right? Now, join the Army if you want to. I did 28 years in Her Majesty's service in the Canadian Army. Wouldn't trade it for the world. Great career. But if you're not going to join the public service in the Army, the Coast Guard, working for the government, or some very core professions, you're in the modern gig economy. That's where you are. Now, whether you want to be there or not, again, nobody cares. This is how. So your responsibility, if you want to rock it and live the American dream, you have to be living the current American dream, not the previous one. That's gone. Lament it, have your little cry, have your pity party, then put it aside. The new American dream is your ability and freedom to earn an exponentially growth industry. It's like I read in Alex Hormozzi's book, $100 Million Offers, yesterday. And he talks about this one guy who talks about the difference between sports and business, right? You're going to periodically hit a grand slam. And they saw in the World Series a couple of nights ago. You're going to periodically, but when you hit a grand slam, the biggest thing you can do in baseball, the most runs you can get is 4. However, in business, when you hit a grand slam, you might get 1,000% growth, but you don't know unless you swing, which means in the sports analogy, you have to have your butt out there and in the economy. You've got to figure out what your piece of the niche is. You've got to understand sales. You've got to understand marketing. You've got to understand product. You've got to understand client deliverability. And I'm a huge fan of Alex Hormozzi. If you have no idea how to do any of this, he's got 2 great books, $100 Million Offers, $100 million Leads. He's working on the 3rd one right now. And if you don't want to pay for anything, he offers those books in video course format, free of charge, at acquisition.com. I just think the guy's brilliant. I've used that to learn how to work in the new economy because I came out of the military. I graduated from military service. I retired after 28 years, honorable discharge. Here I am. What do I do? Right? I was 48 at the time. Like, what do you do? I can't stop working. And now I'm in an environment that doesn't look like my previous one. It's like I went from a previous American dream to a new American dream. And so I had to realize I had to understand the world around me, understand how the economy works, and what is the new dream. And now that I've nailed it, I'm working in the new dream. So that's the point of preparedness. If you are building a preparedness plan to protect an ineffective and inefficient methodology of living your life and earning an income, then it's not impossible, but it is going to be far more difficult and you'll be far less successful, right? Because remember, and listen, I work for a salary for 28 years, so trust me, I love salary and I love guarantee and I love the comfortableness that comes with all of that. But as Mr. Wonderful says all the time, that salary is the drug they give you so that you abandon your dreams, right? So if I make $120,000 a year in my job, that sounds good. I probably have a good income and I can have a reasonable life. But I also could be making $120,000 a month in the gig economy. I just can't do that in my salary, right? So that being said, the whole idea of understanding the new dream is then looking at, okay, now what does this mean for preparedness? I live in the gig economy. I have far less certainty on income, but far greater, exponentially larger potential opportunities. That's the offset in the new American dream, right? Now, you want to own a house. The new American dream is not to necessarily own your residence. It's probably to rent for the vast majority of your life because you're going to get in the digital economy the ability to move around. And a former Canadian Prime Minister about a decade ago coined this, Stephen Harper. And he said that everybody, as we move into the global economy, and whether you like his politics or not, he's a brilliant lawyer. He said, you're going to fall into one of 2 categories. You're going to be a somewhere or you're going to be an anywhere. And a somewhere is you've picked an occupation where you have to physically be in a physical location and present somewhere to execute your role, whatever that is. And anywhere means I can execute my role anywhere. I don't have to be with a client. I don't have to be in a specific physical location to deliver the service. I can deliver it from anywhere. Now, if you go into the trades, for example, and you're an electrician, well, obviously you need to physically be somewhere. That's a great opportunity. I'm trying to persuade my youngest son to go into the trades at this point. So if you choose to be an electrician, you have the opportunity to just earn your hourly wage and have a nice, comfortable life. You have that opportunity. But what the internet and the modern economy offers you is the ability to do more. There are some great DIY YouTube channels on how to do electrical installations, etc. People are making thousands of dollars a month as sub-income off that. People are doing consultations on the side. Somebody decides, you know what? And this is why the richest member of my family is the plumber, because when he got his red seal or his journeyman certification, he just bought a truck, threw his name on the side of it. Now he manages something like 22, 25 trucks in his business, and he's by far the wealthiest man in the family because he was a plumber, right? So you have the opportunity with access to the world to stay where you are and do your little thing and be happy with it. And again, remember, preparedness is about protecting the life you want. What you cannot do, what you must not do, and you should not do, is lament or blame or create this world where you're a victim because you can't do what you want and you can't earn the income you want, right? So, for example, we have the advent of AI is coming on, right? And it is what it is. Whether you agree with it or not, AI is going to replace a lot of repetitive tasks that don't need human intuition, emotional involvement, and things along that line, right? So if you are planning on creating a career doing something that is repetitive by nature, for example, if you're an accountant, if you're doing bookkeeping, that's likely going to go away. If you're doing real estate transactions, the transactional side of real estate and the transactional side of legal work, like registering a home, that's probably all going to go away. Now, lawyers will be required because there's an emotional involvement. There's an argumentative involvement. There's an advice involvement. There's things along like that. But great lawyers will use AI to leverage their knowledge base, right? You want to research all the cases. You don't have to go into law libraries anymore. And I'll say this, I'm a university professor, and I have the opportunity periodically to be an academic supervisor for individuals who are pursuing their master's or PhD thesis. And so what I tell them is AI has a role in modern world. AI has a role to support people, right? So again, embracing the modern world means you embrace the technology the modern world affords you in your pursuit of the almighty dollar and the lifestyle you want. Again, it is the modern American dream that puts you squarely in this modern-based knowledge economy that's grounded and functions 100%. It functions 80% on the internet. There's still 20% of the people who have got to be somewheres. Wonderful jobs, have a great life, nothing wrong with them. But 80%, I would argue, of the economy is based upon access to the internet and access to international clients, right? So there's a couple of great YouTube channels that talk about that. There's a couple of great ideas. We're putting together some other stuff on our side. But if you think about the global economy and what it looks like where you live, you can move to Thailand. And digital nomads are this great idea. And I'm not prescribing it for anybody. I'm just saying it's a booming industry, but it's a really tough competitive industry, right? So what you have to do to be successful is not, if you offer a commodity-based economy, right, or commodity-based product, which means you are in competition with a whole bunch of other people that do the same thing you do. So graphic design, for example. If you're online as a graphic designer and you have great skills and other people have great skills as well, and you probably are not that much differentiated in your skill, then you have to differentiate in service, right? Because if it's a commodity-based pricing strategy, you're going to be in a race to the zero, right? Everybody's trying to be a little bit cheaper. Value is where money is found. Value is what people perceive they're gaining by using your service, right? So if I'm a company hiring a graphic designer, Price, yeah, it's obviously important, but at a certain point, there's going to be a lot of people in a generally specific space. I'm looking for value. What is the value you bring to the table? And again, that's your skill sets. That's your personality. That's your service. It's not necessarily anymore your qualifications. And let me tell you, I'm a guy here with 11 and a half years of university. Okay? So I have tons of qualifications, but that doesn't get me the job anymore, right? Getting a university degree is great if it's very specific required for a profession. But let me tell you, if you're going to get a liberal arts major and you think you're going to go out into the world economy and talk about Roman literature, and, nothing wrong with Roman era literature, go after it. Just understand that you have to first know that there is a market out there that you can penetrate with your knowledge and skills in Roman literature that is going to be able to earn you an income. If that's not true, then I have no feelings of support for you as you sit there after 4 years of a social science degree in Roman literature and you're bemoaning the fact that there aren't any jobs for you and you've put in 300 applications and nobody's responding. Again, you're chasing something that is rare. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist anymore, but you're chasing something as rare. I go to school, I get a degree, I get a qualification, I apply, and I get hired at an entry-level position, and I work my way up the firm. That is rare. It doesn't happen very often. I'm not going to say it doesn't exist, but it doesn't happen very often. And far too many people are still being sold that bill of goods. Why would I sell it to you? Because I'm going to make tens of thousands of dollars if I'm a university off of your butt. Full stop. It's an economy. I'm selling you something. You're buying it with a perceived benefit without any guarantee that that benefit exists anymore. It did 40 years ago. It did 30 years ago. But you're still looking at that and saying, that's the world I want. I want to go to university. I want to get my 4-year degree. I want to graduate with honors. I want to apply to a number of jobs. I want to have some interviews, pick the best of the interview offers that I get a job and start working in a firm. You are chasing an exceptionally rare experience. That's not the experience today. And some people will say, I don't like the uncomfortableness of the knowledge economy and the gig economy and not being able to earn an income. And it's very difficult not knowing 1 month I get $10,000, the next month I get $1,000. Again, nobody's asking you whether you like it or not. This is how the global workforce is changing. You're a somewhere or you're in anywhere. And if you're a somewhere, you better have a set of skills that can't be replaced. In the trades and the military and some professions, you're absolutely right. Go to school, get your degree, go to college, earn your trades qualification, get your red seal, get your journeyman. There is nowhere near enough people in the trades. If you're willing to go into the trades, you've got a great, comfortable life ahead of you. You really, really do. But for those who don't want to be in the trades and don't want to be in the professions, you have a world in front of you that's telling you what to do. Most people are just not listening. So again, you wrap this around your blanket of preparedness and you come back and you say, okay, I have a job. I think I'm earning, $5,000 a month. It's going to, you've done your pivot plan that we recommend within your financial skill set. And you haven't built it based on the local economy, based on the current economy, and based on the gig economy. Again, you're setting yourself to pivot to a position when you get fired or you lose your job where you don't have the appropriate supports, right? Or you've got this vision, I want to own a home. Great. Very difficult to do because a mortgage is a loan against your income secured by your house. That's what a mortgage is. So when somebody looks at loaning you a mortgage, they're looking at the sustainability long-term of your income. Obviously, it's got to be a certain level, right? Because there's percentages, allocations, rules, tests that governments put into place. But in the end, when you're being examined whether you qualify for a mortgage or not, it's on long-term sustainability of your income, right? Nobody cares that you can afford $3,000 a month rent, but you're being turned down for a mortgage. Then you're not understanding what a mortgage is, right? That's what a mortgage is. It's just secured against your house. That's all it is. The house is just the security for the loan. That's all it is, right? So when I'm going to loan you a mortgage, if I'm a mortgage company, I want to make sure you've got long-term sustainability at least out. If I'm going to give you a fixed 5-year mortgage, I need to have a strong level of confidence that what you're earning is sustainable for 5 years. In today's economy, that's very, very difficult to do, which makes a lot of people who make good short-term money very difficult to get a mortgage. Anyhow, the world is changing. You have to understand. And so if you can wrap your head around, again, and I'm unapologetically clear on this, nobody cares whether you like this or not. Nobody cares whether this is the world you want to live in or you think it's right or just. Like, nobody cares. If you can wrap your head around the fact that the American dream has switched from what it used to be to what it is now, and understand what fuels the economy and understands how to be successful, then you will have the American dream in the new economy. And the American dream looks different. If you understand that, then you've got a high probability of being exceptionally successful, protecting yourself. And then when you understand that and you marry that with a great preparedness plan, you've now insulated the modern gig economy, which itself looks different than what you would insulate in the old style 1970s American dream of white picket fence. Once you make that leap and you jump all into the new economy and you wrap yourself around that, Bob's your uncle, man. You are good to go. You will be well protected, well facilitated. You'll have a world of opportunity out front of you. And if you continually to stay at the cutting edge of your niche, whatever that is, you are going to be incredible, high potential of being happy, and your outcomes are going to be limitless. So thank you very much for joining us this week at Inside My Canoe Head. Drop over to our website, www.insidemycanoehead, or our parent company, www.preparednesslabs.ca, to see what we have to offer over there. And we ask that you do one thing. You can follow us on all our socials. We're across every one of the socials. If you like what you hear today or any other day, all that I ask is that you extend this podcast to somebody else. You tell them it's there. We don't get paid for this podcast. There are no ads. There are no revenue models behind it. It is simply our ability and our decision to pass on preparedness information to the masses that's based upon evidence. Logic, evidence, non-apocalyptic for rational people to understand how do you navigate this crazy, changing, chaotic political, economic, cultural, and familial world to be successful chasing your dreams, wrapping that all in a blanket of preparedness. So when you get punched upside the head by all of these things you can't control, the effect is marginal to you when it's significantly impactful to others. That's what we do here, free of charge, always will be. Thanks again. Take care. Stay safe.